Welcome to Building the Foundation for Grant Seeking in Public Libraries. My name is Shannan Furlow, and I am the IT Program Manager for Georgia Public Library Service. GPLS is a unit of the Board of Regents Office of the University System of Georgia. We serve all 62 public library systems in Georgia. In addition to a variety of programs, GPLS is also home to the Pines open source integrated library system. Here's a little bit about me for those who don't know me. I am a California native who has lived in Georgia for 10 years. The bulk of my experience is in university systems and public libraries. I started at GPLS in March of 2018. I received my MLIS from Valdosta State in 2019. I oversee both the LibTech Fund program, which is funding received through state bonds for technology in public libraries, and the LIFT grants program, which I'm going to talk about today. This is one of my favorite quotes from our state librarian, Julie Walker. Libraries exist to help people succeed during every phase of their life. And I would add to that with every circumstance, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. The goal of today's presentation is to help you to think about creating your own grant program or assist those in getting started with grant seeking. In this presentation, I'm going to talk a bit about the LIFT Grants program, leveraging existing resources to support grant seeking, the COVID-19 impact on public library funding, discovering the right tools to aid with searching and applying for grants, the future of public library grant seeking in Georgia, and at the end of the presentation, I will take questions. Let's start with the library's initiatives for funding technology or LIFT grants program. The grant program is technology focused and housed in the IT department, though I do share any non-tech grant opportunities that I find. It is a brand new program for GPLS, which started in 2018 with me being hired. There are two main services: assistance with grant seeking and support with grant applications. Under grant seeking, I provide the libraries with available grant opportunities weekly from a variety of sources, including GrantWatch, a grant subscription service. I also aid libraries in the evaluation of grant opportunities to see if they are a good fit for the organization. On the application support side, I brainstorm grant ideas with the libraries and help guide them through the grant requirements. I also review applications before libraries submit them. This can be one review right before the deadline or multiple reviews as the draft is being composed. This is the program in a nutshell. At this time, I am the only staff person dedicated to the program. Let's talk about leveraging existing resources next. This was a huge part of the success of the LIFT program. The existing LibTech Fund program was an important part of starting LIFT. The LibTech program has been running since fall 2013, so about 7 years now. I started managing the program in 2018. Since this was an existing program, when I first started, I hit the ground running and started interacting with library directors and IT staff immediately. GPLS staff wear many hats for our libraries, so I can be a consultant or a subject matter expert or a troubleshooter from week to week. This allowed me to build trust in the relationships with my customers. They know if I am using the same dedication and experience from LibTech to apply to LIFT, then they are getting the same level of customer service. Library staff are also familiar with the resources we provide. They know we have a dedicated website with information for each of our programs, mailing lists where they can get the latest news, and 3 directors meetings and 1 tech bootcamp each year where we give them new information and talk about library tech trends. They were also used to an application cycle with multiple deadlines. LibTech starts with the funding year launch in August. Then libraries draft purchasing plans that are due in fall. And finally, invoices and other documentation are submitted for reimbursement in spring. Through LibTech, they were also used to me sharing resources with them and sharing resources with each other. Not only were relationships built with GPLS, but also across the 62 library systems. We wanted to start the grant program off with a pilot in January 2019 to gauge interest. We asked for 3 libraries to volunteer with a focus on applying for the IMLS Accelerating Promising Practices in Small Libraries grant. They received full grant support, from access to webinars, to a dedicated web page with resources, to office hours for brainstorming, and multiple application reviews. We ended up with 3 very different grant proposals: an inmate release education program, a tech mobile that used Dollar General stores as hubs, and a recording studio to bring tweens and teens to the library for podcasting and music. One project was funded, which was the inmate release education program called the Next Chapter program. It focused on using Niche Academy as a tool for classes to help soon-to-be and released inmates transition from prison to normal life. They lined up experts to create videos in everything from changing the oil on a car to getting a driver's license. We were so happy with the funding success that we presented at the next GPLS directors meeting. It was so well received that we would move into a soft launch for the rest of the funding year and open LIFT to all 62 library systems. Marketing was really key with starting the grant program. Finding the right avenues to communicate with my audience was my top priority. I spoke with our communications department about my ideas and how they were communicating with our libraries now. I provided 3 resources in the beginning: an available grants webpage, a biweekly email, and a monthly newsletter. People responded well to the webpage and email, but not to the newsletter. We ended up dropping the newsletter. Consistent messaging was also crucial. Something as small as making sure that all grant emails came from me at my email address instead of from my supervisor or another team member. This was also important in getting library staff to see me as a grant expert. It took consistent emails, presentations at meetings and conferences, and a push from other GPLS divisions to really make that transition. This year, I added promotions about funded grants. A funded grants webpage was added to the LIFT Grants website. It lists all the libraries that received grant awards since the start of the program. Also, funded grants are now on the staff reports provided to library directors at their seasonal directors meetings. Promoting their successes really created a positive feedback loop and more communication between the libraries and me. Here's a quick data spotlight on the website statistics for the LIFT Grants program. The website was the first resource to be deployed for the program. There were 602 unique page views in FY19. FY19 was a pilot and soft launch, so half a funding year. We almost doubled the interest in grants information on the web pages to 1,092 unique page views in FY20. That leads us to 241 unique page views in FY21, where we are just about to start our grant season next week. I expect those numbers to jump. Next, I want to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on library funding. It really has changed the landscape for our public libraries. The environment that we live in is uncertain. We are 6 months out with no vaccine and the emotional highs and lows of outbreaks. Many of us are still working virtually or starting to consider returning to in-person services. The economy was hit so hard by the pandemic that libraries are starting to see an impact on their budgets. Normal funding is scarce. Libraries are really having to learn to find new funding sources, and grant opportunities are a major piece of that. Another source is the federal grant funding coming down through discretionary grants or state agencies. Federal grants can be intimidating, but rewarding if funded. It is important to take advantage of all the presented opportunities. This really means moving out of your comfort zone. My advice is to apply for everything. Find ways to tailor your grant proposals to the different opportunities. Most of the time, there's a fit with your organization and programs. You just have to get creative. It is worth the time to look for grants and plan for applications. For example, one library has already received $12,000 since March and is waiting for word on another large award. Take the initiative to put the right pieces in place for success. Again, this goes back to research and planning. The right pieces could be gathering a team of experts to fill out parts of an application or fulfilling a submission requirement early. A good example of this is getting a SAM.gov registration for federal grants. Many of our libraries weren't able to apply for the IMLS CARES Act discretionary grant back in June because of issues with getting a SAM.gov account. This takes months to complete registration. Lastly, don't be afraid to ask questions. I always tell this to my libraries. I am here to help. Also, many grant funders have a designated contact for the grants, and they are more than willing to answer any questions. Some may even review your application for you. This is a quick data spotlight on Lyft grant support via our help desk. I received 12 tickets in FY19. Again, this was the pilot year, so it represents half a year. FY20 saw the tickets almost quadruple to 46 tickets. And in FY21, we have already surpassed the pilot year at 14 tickets just in 2 months. Now I would like to talk a bit about discovering the right tools. This can mean different things for different organizations. I'm going to show what was the right fit for me and for our libraries. For our libraries, finding the right tools really started with an understanding of the grant funding cycle, starting with evaluation. Evaluation of a funding opportunity means understanding the requirements and seeing if they are doable in the timeline given. It also means understanding the priorities of the funding agency and your organization to see if they fit. Brainstorming is next. This is my favorite part. I assist the libraries by running through an application checklist and helping them find their hook. More on this on the next slide. Next is the development of the draft application. Identifying an application lead is important. There needs to be someone to schedule meetings, keep the group on task, and ultimately to polish the application and hit submit. The best way to collaborate is to create a shared document that everyone can edit, such as a Google Doc. I often have libraries add me to a Google Doc with their application content. This allows me to ask questions directly, make edits, and review again after changes have been made. A critical part of developing an application is to complete those submission requirements early. Thinking back to the SAM.gov example that I mentioned earlier, you don't want to put all this effort into an application and then not be able to submit. Under review, finding a second or even a third eye to review your application is really important. Sometimes you can look at a document so much your eyes cross and you may miss things. It would also allow for collaboration back and forth to get the application just right. Make sure to build in time for multiple reviews. Again, taking a break from an application and returning can lead to amazing results. Also, make sure you've allowed time for review and approval by administration or director. It may take a few days to complete. Next is submitting the application. The critical thing here is to submit early during normal business hours. Don't leave it for the last minute. I had one library experience issues with an application on the day of the deadline, and they were submitting at 8 p.m. Even though the deadline was midnight, they didn't get a response until the next day and they missed the deadline. Also, make sure to print or PDF all application documents for easy reference for later and keep that confirmation email handy so that if you need to check in with the funder, you have the information within easy reach. Last but most importantly, repeat. Most people stop at one application and then wait. My advice is don't. Apply for everything you can. The more you apply, the more likely it is that you will receive funding. This leads me to the application checklist that I mentioned under brainstorming. This is my go-to for every application that I review or person that I talk with about their application. Keep this handy. The goal at the end of this is to know how you are going to tailor your application to the grant requirements and find that hook to make your application stand out. Recycling pieces of your completed applications is a great tool in grant seeking. It allows you to keep trying for other opportunities for the same project or adjust content for similar projects. By breaking them into pieces, you can tailor the application to suit the grant, basically picking and choosing what works best. As you start to do more and more applications, you end up creating templates and gathering tips naturally, such as the application checklist that I showed above. Here are some tips that I have found over the last couple years. Register for your SAM.gov account early for any ILMS grant. Create your online account early for Dollar General Foundation. Often they have to set it up for you. And make sure for any grant with CARES Act funding that you include the COVID-19 impact on your library. Here is a quick data spotlight on application reviews. Many people use my resources to find opportunities, but it is slow going for application reviews. FY19 was half a year with a pilot and soft launch, so the number was small at 7 applications. The amount jumped to 26 applications in FY20. We are sitting at 3 applications so far this year. I've had a lot of interest in upcoming grants. My hope is that the number will move up. Last, I want to talk about the future of grant seeking for public libraries. In my organization and within our public libraries, there is a growing momentum in grant seeking. More libraries are interested in grant opportunities that I am sending out and are asking questions. The lead team, our administration, is more engaged with the topic and either email me grants to send to the libraries or grant proposals to review. I am often asked to talk about upcoming grants and grant seeking at directors' meetings and conferences such as GLC and our Tech Bootcamp. I am also starting to see repeat requests for applications assistance. At this time, I've helped one library system with 6 applications since January. This is wonderful, and the library is spreading the word about the program. What started small is now a full-time grant program. Time management has become critical for me. There are so many opportunities happening that I've had to create a framework to keep organized and on track, including project plans and funding cycles. This is the last data spotlight, focusing on what has been funded since LIFT started. In FY19, our pilot library received $39,992 under the ILMS app grant. In FY20, our libraries were funded $90,192 in grant awards, from Census Rapid Response grants to Dollar General Foundation literacy grants to the second round of ILMS app grant funding. So far this year, we have been funded $30,000. We are hoping to hear back in the next week or so about the ILMS CARES Act discretionary grant applications that were submitted in June. Fingers crossed. To wrap up, here is my email, sfurlow@georgialibraries.org, and the link to the LIFT web pages under geolibtech.georgialibraries.org if you are interested in exploring the site. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.